So just before we begin this year, first of all, an incredible and tremendous thank you, I should call it, to Reb Chananya Kramer, who is our videographer today. It's a real schus for our shir to be included in the Siyum Hashas video. And Chananya, thank you. It's also, after shir, Reb Chananya is looking to interview some members of the shir. I'm going to give a list of who I don't want to be interviewed. Okay, you'll get a text from me. You'll get a text from me sometime over the course of the shir. Yeah, and from the laughter, you know who you are. Right? So I'll say, but on a serious note, if anyone has some time just to stay for a few minutes, obviously the interviews will be quick, but they'll be one at a time. So if you have a few minutes after the shir to meet Reb Chananya in the back of the Beis Medrash to help out with this special project, it would be wonderful. It's also fantastic. We're going to start, by the way, there's going to be a video shoot now every Sunday in Meretz Hashem. It's some people I recognize, others it's good to see some old faces. Baruch Hashem, but really a great schos. Let's begin. All right, Rabbi, say good morning. We have the great schus today to begin the 8th perek of Meseches Bechoros. I want to thank Rabbi Yehuda for giving the shir yesterday. And I also really want to, it's beautiful. I appreciate people think Bechoros isn't exciting, but the excitement that has been generated since Friday's daf, and the number of shilas, technical shilas I've received, it's quite amazing. I want to thank you for your amkus and your delving into the sugyas. A lot of chaburas have started. I'm very impressed, and also at the maturity level of the shir, and also just so with that, let's begin. New parak. Yesh bechar lenachala ve'einu bechar lekohen. So both say, remember again, now at this point in time, so our worlds are coming together. Remember, up until this point in time, we've discussed the concept of bechar behem. Our shir this morning is dedicated by the Terniansky family. Michael has yahrzeit for his mother today, Shendel Bas Mordechai. We hope then on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah in the family in a chama. Thank you for the sponsorship. Also, an anonymous sponsorship in the Schus of Refuah Shlema for Tzvi Meir Halevi Ben Saraleah. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, Tzvi Meir, together with Kol Chol Yisrael, have a complete and enduring refuah. Yesh bechar lenachal ve'einu bechar lekohen. So, as I was mentioning before, so we've spoken about bechar in different contexts up until this point. We've spoken about bechar in terms of bechar behema tmeah, bechar behema tahora, and we've spoken a little bit about then we took the movement of the Bechar and applied them vis-a-vis Kohanim. Now the Mishnah is going to speak about the concept of Bechar L'Nachala. Bechar for firstborn for inheritance purposes. So the Mishnah tells us as follows, that there could be circumstances, interestingly enough, what the Mishnah is teaching me is, there is not one definition of Bechar which satisfies the criteria for all situations. So for example, you could have a Bechar who is a firstborn for inheritance purposes, but is not necessarily a Bechar L'Kohen. What does it mean, Bechar L'Kohen? Bechar L'Kohen means the type of Bechar who would have to be redeemed through what we call Pidyon Ben. That's what it means, Bechar L'Kohen. So I could have a child who's a firstborn in terms of inheritance purposes, but that child would not necessarily be subject to Pidyon Ben. Similarly, Bechar L'Kohen ve'einu Bechar L'Nachala. Similarly, again, you could have a Bechar for Pidyon Ben purposes, a child who is firstborn who has to be redeemed from the Kohen, yet ve'einu Bechar L'Nachala. Yet that child ultimately, again, is not a firstborn for inheritance purposes. So we'll say now the Mishnah is going to go through the different cases, and we're going to see Rashi is going to highlight the criteria. So here we go. Bechar L'Nachala Ula Kohen. So we'll say similarly again, you can have a Bechar who satisfies the criteria both for inheritance purposes as well as for Pidyon Ben purposes. V'yesh she'eno Bechar lo l'nachala v'lo l'kohen. And you could have a child who is technically a firstborn child, yet he does not satisfy the criteria, neither for inheritance purposes nor for Pidyon Ben purposes. But so here we go. Now the Mishnah is going to go through all the cases. So category number 1. Eizuhu b'char l'nachala ve'ein lo b'char l'kohen. But say, what is the type of firstborn child who is a Bechar for inheritance purposes, but is not a Bechar ultimately for Pidyon Ben purposes? So which the Mishnah says, Haba achar nefalim. One who goes ahead and is born after a nefa. We're going to define these terms in just a moment, but for our purposes for this moment, a nefa means a non-viable child. So a child who is born after a non-viable child, sheyatsa es rosho chai. Ultimately, again, the nefel, the head emerged up from the nefel, and then afterwards a second child was born. That second child who was born is a bechar for nachala, but not a bechar ultimately for pidyon haben. What's the case here? Take a look at Rashi. Haba achar nefalim sheyatsa rosho shel nefesh chai, kigon shev to omen. So again, the details of these cases are going to become a bit clearer in the Gemara, but for our purposes now, we're dealing with a situation of twins. Tomim. So what happens? Echad neifel ve'echad kalu chadashim. So Rashi's here says something very cryptic, which is one of them is fully formed and one of them is not. Now, kalu chadashim literally means full gestational period versus non-full. What it really means over here is you have twins. One is healthy and one is nebach not. So one is viable, one is not. And what happens? This is amazing. So the Gemara says, "V'hotzi nefel rosho chai v'echziro." So what happened over here? The nefel, the non-viable twin, puts its head out. Right, the head comes out of the mother, but then the child goes back into the womb. And then what happens? Uba chaveiro v'kidmo, and then the second viable child is then subsequently born. So the second one who comes out, we'll say now, is Bechor L'Nachala. The Rishon lo hefsido afagav the Rosh Shahotzi Chashuv Leida Ma'alya. So we'll say this is very interesting. So here's the case. So remember again, the non-viable child, its head exits first, then head goes back into the mother. The second viable child is subsequently born. So the Mishnah says this is an example of a child who is a Bechor for Nachala, for inheritance purposes, but not a Bechor ultimately for Pidyon Haben. Why? Now watch this. Rashi says, my time. Now we'll say, now what's the chiddush over here? You know the chiddush, because this goes back to our chulin days. We know that once the head exits the mother, then what? Not even the whole head, as we're going to discuss. That's birth. That's considered birth. See, even though, again, child number one is quote-unquote considered birthed, nevertheless, it will only be a bechor for nachala purposes, not for pidyon haben purposes. My timer, here we go. The gabi nachlok siv reshis ono. Both says we're going to see, and again we're going to expound on all of this, but by Bechar, the Torah says who is the Bechar for inheritance purposes? Reshis Ono. Now both say, now Reshis Ono literally means what? The first of the seed of the father. That's literally what it means. The Bechar is the firstborn child of the father. But the Gemara Maseches Nida darshins this and says, Mishalev aviv dava alav im meis. Both say, the Gemara makes a little bit of a play on words. Ono from Lashon Aninos. Reshis Ono means a child over whom the father would mourn. What does that mean? A child over a viable child. In other words, there's no hilchos avelos. There's no obligation to mourn over a non-viable child. So who is the child who is considered to bechar for the father? Ultimately, again, Reshis Ono, for Nachala, for inheritance purposes, Reshis Ono, Reshis Aninuso, a child for whom the father would be obligated to mourn. Therefore, again, Yotzen Efel, Shahotzi Rosho Rishon, Vavikiyolod, Delav Bar Kayomahu Ve'ein Libo Dava Alav. Therefore, again, says Rashi, when the nefel, even though the head of the nefel comes out first, because this is a non-viable child, this will not be a child over whom the father will mourn, and therefore what? It does not satisfy the criteria ultimately of Reshis Ono. Masha'en Kain, Aval Le'inyan Kohen, Pater, so Pater Hai Vlad Acharon, the Bepeter Rechem Talya Milsa, Vairishon Peter Rechem. So we'll see, here we go. This is a very important Rashi. So Rashi now just gave us our criteria. Let's work backwards. What's the criteria ultimately again for Pidyon Haben? For Pidyon Haben, for being a firstborn child for Pidyon Haben? Peter Rechem. Peter Rechem means what? Whoever comes out of the womb first. Viability is not really of importance over here. Therefore, again, on a technical level, if you have a non-viable child come out first, right, that child is the Petarechem. Because again, I will say there's a physiological reality. That child ultimately came out first, and therefore, again, even though it's non-viable, the child who comes after it, who may be the viable child, can't be called a Petarechem. You can't be called a Petarechem if you are not the first issue of the womb. As such, even if the first child is not viable, if it's born first, it exempts the second child, twin, from Pidyon Haben. Masha'en Kain when it comes to the laws of inheritance. When it comes to the laws of inheritance, Rabbosai, the firstborn is the child over whom the father would mourn if the child were to pass away. The Gemara understands this excludes a nefel, a non-viable nefel, who was never really considered alive. This would not satisfy the criteria. We'll say, again, not to confuse mourning with sadness. The father will always be sad. This is mourning. Who are you obligated to mourn over? You're not obligated to mourn over a non-viable child. Therefore, again, for nachala purposes, in this case where the nefel is the firstborn, since it's not considered to be a viable birth, therefore it's not the bechar, and therefore the second child who ultimately comes out will be the bechar for inheritance purposes. So I will say this is very important because this definition is going to follow us through the entire Mishnah and Gemara. Two different definitions for firstborn. For nachala purposes, the firstborn is the first child to be born over whom the father would mourn if the child were to pass away. This excludes what? This excludes who? A nefel. Excellent. For pidyon haben purposes, the definition of bechar is Petarechem, firstborn, physiological reality. The viability of the child is really not of consequence or of concern to us. Good. Next, Hamapeles. So both say, so case number one, where the child is a Bechar for Nachala, not a Bechar for Kohen, is a child who is born after the Nefel. The twins, first one is non-viable, second one is viable, even though the first one extended its head out first, nevertheless, the second one that comes out is a Bechar for inheritance, but not a bechar for pidyon haben. Uben teisha sheyatza rosh hames. And I both say the same thing would be true if the child was fully developed, born at the end of 9 months, but nebach was a stillborn. So again, same situation. The child who comes after the stillborn, this works best in a case of twins. That's how the Mishnah is setting it up. The child who comes out after the stillborn ultimately will be a bechar for nachala, for inheritance purposes, but not a bechar for pidyon haben purposes. Next, hamapeles kimin behema chayiv of. What if a woman miscarries and the offspring looks like something like doesn't have like a human form? It looks like a behema chayiv of. So we'll say div Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. So again, Rashi says over here, Rashi's girsa is v'china mapeles. Lemiftar minachala lo chashivi de'in halev davale aval peterechem yahav. So we'll say same thing. Another example of a case of a child who would be a bechar for inheritance purposes, but not for pidyon haben purposes. The mother gives birth to something that does not resemble a human child at all, which dies, meaning there's no life in this. So ultimately, again, this entity is a petarechem. It did open the womb, and therefore the child who comes after it will not be a bechar for pidyon haben purposes, but will be a bechar ultimately for what? For inheritance purposes. The Chacham say ad sheyehei bo mitzuras ha'adam. The Chachamim say that even for pidyon haben purposes, a child is only considered to be petarechem when it's a human form. If it doesn't have a human form, then it's not considered to be petarechem. Next, hamapeles sandal, o shalya, o shafir merukam. So we'll say again, if a woman miscarries, a sandal. Sandal means just that Rashi says she'eno tzuras panim. It doesn't have any facial features. O shalya, or a placenta, o shafir merukam, or an embryo that is somewhat formed. Vayotze mechutach, or the baby is born, but it's born dismembered. Haba achareihem, the child that comes after this first one, bechar lenechala ve'eno bechar lekohen. So we'll say, remember again, here's the beauty of definitions. Once you have definitions, you can fit all of the cases into this. So remember again, definition of a bechar lenechala means the child who is born is a viable child whom the father would mourn over if the child were to pass away. If you don't satisfy that criteria, you're not a bechar for nachala. On the flip side, the definition of bechar for pidyon haben purposes is what? Is petarechem. Therefore, all of these cases, even though these are non-viable births, at the end of the day, they open the womb of the mother, their first issue of the womb of the mother. As such, the child who comes after them will not be a bechar for petarechem purposes. Mishalo hayulo banim. What's another interesting case? Someone who did not have children, right? A man did not have children. V'nasa isha shekvar yalda, and he marries a woman who had already given birth. So she already had children of her own. So, or oda shifcha vinishtachara. So, most of these are interesting cases. Ralki Rashi for just a moment. Shekvar yalda the leinyan nachla talya milsa ba'ab dichsev reishes ono or leinyan kohen petrachim. So, we'll say these are further examples of a firstborn child who would be a bechor for inheritance purposes, but not for pidyon haben purposes. A man marries a woman who already had children. They have a child together. That firstborn will be the firstborn of the father. And therefore what? He's the firstborn for nachala, for inheritance purposes. But he's not a petarechem. The mother already had children. And therefore, again, so here's another case of a child who will be a bechar ultimately, again, for nachala purposes, for inheritance purposes, but not for pidyon haben purposes. Another example of this, Oda shivchasa v'nishtachrera. Look at Rashi. Oda shivcha, afilu oda shivcha b'leida rishona v'nishtachrera. We'll say, let's say a woman who had given birth when she is a shivcha, right? A woman who was a maidservant, she gave birth. Then what happens? I will say this about, remember, this is a shivcha kinanis. This is a non-Jewish maidservant who upon emancipation becomes Jewish. She gave birth when she was a maidservant. Now she's emancipated. Now she's a full-fledged Jewess. She marries, she has a child. What's the status? Or oda ovedes kochavim v'nis gaira. And I will say, or for example, again, a woman who was a Gentile, right? A non-Jewish woman who has a child when she's not Jewish, converts and then has another child. Mishabasa li Yisrael yolda b'char lenachala ve'ena b'char lekohen. So we'll see in all of these cases, when the woman gives birth to her first son after becoming Jewish, whether it's as an emancipated maidservant or as a giores, so what's the halacha? If she has a boy after becoming Jewish, what's the halacha? We'll say, what's the halacha? So again, remember, assuming that the man who she's having a child with has not had children yet, so in all of these cases, the firstborn male will be a bechar for inheritance purposes, but will not be a bechar for pidyon haben purposes. So we'll say again, remember, all of these cases are simple once you understand your definition. A child born cannot be a bechar for pidyon haben purposes. Why? Because ultimately, again, this woman has already given birth, but the child will be considered a rishis ono, the first of the seed of the father, and therefore halacha l'maisa will be a bechar for nachala purposes. Beautiful. Now comes on Rabbi Yossi Galili, is amazing. Rabbi Yossi Galili says no. Omer bechar l'nachala ula kohen. We'll say incredible. Rabbi Yossi Galili disagrees. He says, in fact, in these cases, we'll say now, he's specifically arguing on the case of the Giores and the Shifcha. And Rabbi Yossi Galili posits that when this woman converts or she becomes emancipated, the first child she has now as a Jew will be a Bechar both for Nachala and for pidyon haben purposes. Why? Get ready for this. Shene'amar Peter Rechem B'Yisrael. We'll say, now listen to how incredible this is, right? Peter Rechem B'Yisrael. So what is he darshan? Who is considered to be the Bechar? The one who opened your womb as a Yisrael. Ad sheyifteru rechem mi Yisrael. Until ultimately, again, you are the firstborn, the first issue of the womb is Yisrael. Both say, you understand what's happening over here? You understand what Rabbi Yossi Aglili is saying? You understand the deeper message in this? So I'll say, what do you say? Peter Rechem is a Metzias. It's a Metzias, right? Either you're the firstborn of the womb or you're not. What do you mean, Peter Rechem mi Yisrael? Both say, you see, the godless of Klal Yisrael. The godless of Klal Yisrael is that we defy the laws of nature. This is a difference in Klal Yisrael. We live lemala min hateva. We live above the norm, beyond the natural order of the world. There are so many examples of this. The paradigmatic example of this is tshuva, right? Tshuva is lemala min hateva. The ability to go ahead and start again. Not only start again, the ability, like Chazal tells, like Gemara says, to turn your averos into shkagos, to turn your intentional averos into accidental averos, to go further, to turn your averos into schuyos, to transform yourself from one state to another, to transform yourself from an evet to a ben chorin, from a guy to a Yisrael. These things are lemala min hateva. Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, so ultimately, Peter Rechem, I don't understand. Either you're the first issue of the womb or you're not. Something dramatically happens when you become a Jew. Something dramatically changes. Gershin is gayer kekatan shenola dummy. There's a brand new Metzias. When you become a Jew, you become something that is lemala min hateva, something above the norm. This person is reborn. This is a renaissance. It's a new person. Barim chadashos baolakan. So now the first child she has over here is not a second child, but rather what is it? So I was saying, and again, you got to get more excited about this stuff. I mean, really, come on. Right? So I just want to tell you something amazing. Just understand, if this is true for a shivcha, and it's true for Giores, then what does it mean for us? Right? What does it mean for us? We have this ability. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is literally saying that when this woman becomes a Jew, her physical metzias changes. She had 27 kids when she was a shivcha, right? She had 15 kids when she was a guy, but now she becomes a Jew, and suddenly what? Peter Rechem. Why? Because when you become a Jew, you change your metzius. Because when you become a Jew, you live l'mam and atem. Rabbi Yosef, that's true for the shivcha. It's true for the Bechoros. So again, we have that ability to tap into that metzius every single day, to remake ourselves, to reforge ourselves, to recalibrate our inner settings, to become someone different, to become the person. We could change our metzius. That's what Rabbi Yosef is saying, is a Jew changes his or her metzius. We have the ability to do that right now. I know what you're thinking right now. I'm too tired to change anything. I don't even know if I could turn the page when I get to Amud Beis. Rabbi say, but that's the great gift we have, to change it. Am I the only one who's tapping into this? Okay, good. Change our metzius. All right, good. Let's go right there. Says the Gemara. So Rabbi Yosef disagrees, and he says over here that Allah Chalamai says Peta Rechem B'Yisrael. Peta Rechem B'Yisrael. That ultimately, again, it's only the firstborn when you are a Jew, and therefore, even if she had children beforehand, the first child she has as a Jew ultimately is the Bechar, not only for Nachala purposes, but also for Pidyon Haben purposes. The Gemara goes weiter. Misha hayu lo banim v'nasa isha shel yad. Rabbi said this is the reverse case. A man had children, and he marries a woman who had never given birth before. Or, so that's case number one, simple, two Jews, right? Man had been married before, or married, not married. He had children before, right? And now halacha ma'aseh, he marries a woman who had never had children before. That's case number one. Or, niskaira me'uberes. This is a great case. What happens? Let's say she goes in and she converts while she's pregnant. Now look at Rashi just a moment. Niskaira me'uberes. It's in the wide lines of Rashi, about 4 lines in. Uba'ala ima. This is actually an incredible case. This is where the couple converted together. So man and woman are not Jewish. Woman becomes pregnant. They then decide to convert together. V'yolda have also vlad b'char l'koyin the peta rechem hu b'Yisrael v'lo l'nachala d'horasa shelo b'kedusha v'lav bar nachalur. Both says it's actually very interesting. So this firstborn child, right, who's born after the woman converts, will be a b'char for Pidyon Haben, but not a b'char for nachala purposes. Why not? Because since the child was conceived by a non-Jewish father, the laws of nachala only apply to a Jewish father. When the child, we'll get into this whole discussion about, remember again, let's say even if you have a family unit which converts together, doesn't necessarily mean that halachically the familial bonds transfer from non-Jewish state to Jewish state. Very important halacha. Therefore, again, Rashi is telling us over here that even though the couple converts together, that child who's born when the mother is already Jewish is a bechar for Pidyon Haben purposes. Because remember, again, it's her peta rechem, but not necessarily the bechar for nachala purposes. Rashi says, "Doras of shal b'kedusha v'lav bar nachaluhu." The child was conceived when the couple was not Jewish, and therefore, again, is not subject to the laws of inheritance. V'zera goy rachmana afgrei dichsev v'zram tezer. Fine. So let's go weiter. So similarly, again, if she's emancipated when she's a mu'uberes, so we'll say these again would be examples of where you would have a situation where halacha l'maisa, the child that's born is a bechar for nechala, but not a bechar ultimately for pidyon. I'm sorry, just the opposite. A bechar for Pidyon Haben, but not a bechar ultimately again for nachala. So the Yolda he v'kohenesi. So let's listen to this. Now we get into another category of cases. The Yolda he v'kohenesi ulevia he. So we'll say these are cases where 2 women give birth, and the children get mixed up. We're not sure whose baby is whose, right? Whether that's 2 Yisraeli women, a woman and a Levia. Now, the reason why Levia or Kohanim, remember again, as we're going to see, so the offspring of Leviim and the offspring of Kohanim are exempt from Pidyon Haben. So let's say 2 women give birth and the babies get mixed up. We don't know whose baby is who. Or v'isha shekvar yalda. This, or we'll say similarly again. Let's say 2 women give birth. 1 woman had already given birth previously. 1 woman had never given birth before, and the children get mixed up. We'll say similarly again. A woman who doesn't wait 3 months after getting divorced, after her husband passes away. The halacha that says that after a woman divorces or her husband passes away, she has to wait 3 months before getting remarried. Why? Because in the event that she's pregnant, we want to know whose baby it is. Let's say she did not. So she goes in and she gets remarried within the 3 months, and sure enough, she gives birth. And we're not sure about say whose baby is it? Is it the first man's baby, the second man's baby? And again, we'll say, so this makes a difference l'nachala purposes. So ben tishal arishon and ben shivla achron. I don't know, is it a 9-month-old baby for the first husband, or the 7-month-old baby for the second husband. Bechor lakoin ve'eno bechor. So we'll say in all of these cases, bechor lakoin ve'eno bechor lenachla. So we'll say essentially this last category of cases are all what we would call suffik. Suffik, I don't know if the child is a bechor or not. So we'll say, so what do you do in a case of suffik bechor? So essentially what you do is, for pidyon haben, you're machmir. For pidyon haben, you're machmir, and you make the mother redeem her child, or the father redeem his son. Right? We say out of suffik you have to redeem the child, but out of suffik you did not become the firstborn, ultimately again for inheritance purposes, which we'll say makes sense. Why? Because ultimately, again, what do we say by inheritance? Hamotzi mechaver lavaraya. So remember again, for inheritance purposes, so you have to prove that you're the bechar. If you can't prove you're the bechar, you can't extract the double portion from your father or from your brothers or from the estate. So therefore, again, in any case of suffik bechar, what we'll say is you're a suffik. So suffik lechumra by pidyon haben. Therefore, such a child will have to be redeemed. But suffik lekula, ultimately, again, by nachala purposes, because halacha lemaisa. Beautiful. Amid Beis will say. Amar Shmuel. Comes along Shmuel and says as follows. Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says as follows. Ein harosh poteh ben afam. So we'll say, this is actually very interesting. So remember again, in the first case of the Mishnah, we're talking about a situation where a child is a bechar for nachala purposes, but not a bechar ultimately for pidyon haben purposes. So the Mishnah's first case was haba achar nefalim, that ultimately again, if you have a nefel who is born, right? If you have a nefel who is born, a non-viable child who's born, even if the head comes out, ultimately again that's considered to be a birth, and therefore, halacha l'maisa, the child who comes after that will still be a bechar for nachala purposes, because remember again, the criteria for a bechar for nachala purposes is what? Reishis ono, which means the child whom the father would mourn if the child were to die, but a non-viable child does not satisfy that criteria. So therefore again, halacha l'maisa, when the nefel is born, the child that comes after it will be the bechar for nachala purposes, but not for pidyon haben purposes, because for pidyon haben purposes, it's just petarechem. So comes along Shmuel, and he says as follows: Ein harosh poteh ben nefalim. So we'll say Shmuel comes along, and he says that halacha l'maisa. So the rosh, the emergence of the head, does not pater the animal when it comes to the nefel. When it comes to a nefel. So ein harosh poteh ben nefalim. Look at Rashi just a moment. Ein harosh poteh ben nefalim ben shmona shahotzi rosho chai. So we'll say if you have an 8-month-old baby that its head emerged alive, vech zero, then the child went back into the womb. The kadmo achiv, then the second viable twin comes out. The yatza have bechor lekoin she'ein rosh hanefel potro ad sheyetze rosho verubo. So we'll say, so Shmuel argues, and Shmuel says, the head of a nefel, let's remember again, means a non-viable child. The head of a non-viable child, the emergence of a non-viable child, Shmuel posits, does not constitute birth. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, Shmuel wants to suggest that if all that came out was the head of the nefel, the child who comes after it will be the bechar, both for what? Both for pidyon haben purposes as well as nachala purposes. My taima, what Shmuel say? This is very important. According to Shmuel's arguing on the Mishnah, according to Shmuel, the only time that the birth of a nefel is meaningful is when it's rosho verubo. If the head and the majority of the nefel was born, emerged, then halacha l'maisa, the nefel is considered to have been birthed, and therefore, at least for pidyon haben purposes, it's considered to be the petarechem, and therefore the child that comes after it will not be a bechar. For nachala, remember again, even a nefel that's rosho verubo, ultimately again will not exempt the second child from being the bechar, because again remember, for bechar for nachala purposes it's reishis ono. The bechar is the father who the child would mourn over. So again I will say, to be clear, so Shmuel's coming along and saying that the only time a nefel ultimately exempts the child who comes after it from being the bechar for petarechem, for pidyon haben purposes, is when it's rosho verubo, the head and the majority of the body. My time, what's the reason? Kol asher nishmas ruach chayim ba'apov, because the pasuk says, Kol asher nishmas ruach chaim ba'apav mikol asher b'charava meizu. We're talking about by the Mabul. So what's the definition of life? The definition of life is anything that has the breath of life in its nostrils. That's the definition of life. Kol heicha dinishmas ruach chaim ba'apav. When is something considered to be alive? Only when it has the breath of life, ultimately again, in its nostrils. So the Gemara says, Hu d'chashiv reisha, idach lo chashiv reisha. When is the head, when is the birth of the head considered to be something significant? Only when the child is alive. But if the child is not alive, then the birth of the head is fundamentally insignificant. Lo chashiv reisha. Look at Rashi. Ruach chaim ba'apav, Rashi says, Mishu ben Chaim halach achar apav. Ultimately, again, someone who is alive, we go after the face. Dahainu rosho, aval ilav bar kayama. But ultimately, again, if the child is not viable, so ilav bar kayamahu lo chashiv apeh, then the birth of the head is not significant. So we'll say, so Shmuel fundamentally disagrees on what we said in the Mishnah. The only time that the birth of the head is meaningful and significant is when halacha l'maisa, the child is alive. If the child is not alive, then the birth of the head is not significant. Tanan, so we'll say we analyze this. Tanan, haba achar nefalim sheyatza rosho chai. So we'll say, what do we learn in the Mishnah? If a child is born after a nefel, right? So that's the case over here. So now you have tomim, you have twins. The second child is born after the nefel, sheyatza rosho chai. So remember again, a nefel is a non-viable child. A non-viable child is considered to be as if it's already maced, as if it's already dead. So if Rabbi say, now watch this, what does the Mishnah say? If the second twin comes out after the nefel, or for that matter, you have a fully formed child after the end of 9 months, but that child is a stillborn nebuch. So Rabbi say, the child who comes after that, what did we say in the Mishnah? What's the status of the child who comes afterwards? That child is a bechor, for nachala purposes, but not a bechar for pidyon haben purposes. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa, even with a non-viable child, the birth of the head is what? Considered to be significant. This contradicts what Shmuel said. Katani miharosho. So what do you see from the Mishnah? You see, unlike Shmuel, who says that the birth of the head is only significant by a viable child, according to the Mishnah, the birth of the head is significant even by a non-viable child. Katani miharosho. To which the Gemara says, my rosho. So I should say, my rosho verubo. No. We'll say, in fact, what the Mishnah should say is what? Rosho verubo. What it actually means is that halacha l'maisa, the head and the majority of the body were born. So Gemara says, really? Velisnei rubo. So why don't you say that? Right? That's a pretty important detail to leave out over here. Right? That it doesn't really mean just head, it means head and the majority of the body. So I'll say, so again, understand what's happening over here. So just to be clear, Shmuel's coming along and saying, the only time that the birth of the head is significant meaning what? That it creates a reality of petarechem, is when the child who is born is viable. If the child who is born is non-viable, then halacha l'maisa, the only time the birth is significant is if it's rosho verubo, head in the majority of the body. So, for example, if a nefel, the head of a nefel, non-viable child, were to come out and then go back into the womb, and the second viable child were to be born, Shmuel would actually hold that second child is what? Is a bechor, not only for nachala, which everyone agrees with, but what? Is considered to be a petarechem as well. So we'll say, so now the Gemara is bringing the Mishnah, and the Mishnah clearly seems to contradict that assertion, right? Because the Mishnah clearly indicates that what? That halacha l'maisa, the first case in the Mishnah was where the head of the nefel comes out, and yet the Mishnah says that is considered to be a birth, at least, again, for the purposes of being a petarechem. To which Shmuel says, no. You have to read the Mishnah as saying Rosha verubo. So why doesn't it say Rosha verubo? Velisni rubo. To which the Mishnah says, you're right. Bedinhu di by the Velisni rubo. In reality, the Mishnah should have said rubo as well. The Mishnah should have said the case of the nefel is where the rosh, the head, and the majority of the body is being birthed. So why doesn't it? So we'll say, watch this. Va'aidi de kabai lemisni seifa. But since there's a second case, what's the second case? Bentisha sheyatza rosho meis. So we'll say the case, ultimately, again, the case of the Mishnah, the second case of the Mishnah is a bentisha sheyatza rosho meis, which was what? Which is where you have a fully viable child that was a stillborn. So we'll say in that case that even if the head comes out, that's considered to be a birth, and halacha l'maisa, the child who comes after it, is considered to be a bechor for nachala purposes, but not ultimately again for pidyon haben. To which the Gemara says, Taima dirosh shames. The reason ultimately again why the child who comes after this stillborn is considered to be the firstborn for inheritance purposes is because the first child was born dead. Harosho chai, but if the child was born alive, if the head came out alive, haba acharav bechor lenachala nami lohavi. We'll say if this first child was born alive at the end of 9 months, then enachinami, not only would that child satisfy the criteria for peta rechem for pidyon haben, but it would also what? It would also be the firstborn for what? For nachala as well. To which the Gemara says, therefore, Tana Reisha Nami Rosho. Ultimately, we'll say, so to preserve some level of Mishnaic symmetry, so therefore, again, since it needs to use the lashon of Rosh by the second case of Bentesha, it uses the Rosh ultimately by the first case as well. Umay Kamashwan. So what is it coming to teach us? The Chevan de Mapik Le Reisha Havile Leda. So you're coming to teach me that once the head is born, therefore the animal is considered to be alive? Is that what it's teaching me? To which the Gemara says, Tanina, we already learned this once before. Hodsi Rosho, Afa Bishek Zero, Hareze Kiyolot. Rabbi said, we already learned this long ago in Chulin. We learned this long ago in Chulin. That's what? Once the head comes out, the entity is considered to be as if it's been birthed. To which the Gemara says, but remember, in Meseches Chulin, what was that referring to? V'chi tema ashmo inan behema. Now, both said, I remember again in Meseches Chulin, that was talking to us about an animal. Right there, halacha l'maisa by animals, once the head comes out, ultimately the animal is considered to be birthed. Maybe you're going to say, the Kamashvalan, our Mishnah is coming to teach us that, ba'adam. Right, then halacha l'maisa, the same thing applies by human beings. The adam mi behema lo yalif. Because they're both saying, you cannot learn out the halachas from a person, from an animal. Why not? The less la prazdar. Both say that's very interesting. Literally, there's no hallway. And both say, what does it mean there's no prazdar? When an animal gives birth, so an animal again gives birth from the back of its body. So when the animal comes out, it immediately emerges. When a woman gives birth, ultimately again, so remember again, the area of birth is situated between her legs. As such, there is like a prazdar. There's a hallway. So we'll say, I might have thought like this. I might have thought that halacha l'mai says only by an animal that the emergence of a head is considered to be a birth. Why? Because the emergence of the head is immediately discernible. By a woman, it could be that an emergence of the head, a small part of the head, is not as immediately discernible, since again the birth canal ultimately is there's a hallway, so to speak, right? Her legs are there. Therefore, I'm going to thought we cannot learn out one from the other. Behema me adam lo yalfa. So again, I can't learn out behema from a person. Why? Mishum dechashiv pirtz of panim didei. Because I will say ultimately again, when it comes to an adam, facial features are significant when it comes to birth. But halacha l'maisa, facial features are not significant when it comes to the birth of a person. Facial features are not significant when it comes to an animal. So therefore, I will say, even though again we already learned this concept that the birth of a head is considered to be as if it's born in chulin by behema, right? You could not necessarily automatically assume that we could apply that concept to a human being. So the Gemara says, but one second, hanami tanina, we learned this as well. Yotza kidargo mishe yotza rov rosho. We'll say that after a person is born, once the majority of the head comes out, halacha l'maisa again is considered to be born. Ve'izu rov rosho was considered to be ultimately the majority of the head. Mishe teitze padachto. Once the forehead comes out, once the forehead emerges, halacha l'maisa again, the human being is considered to be born. Tiyufta de Shmuel tiyufta, and I will say this indeed refutes the position of Shmuel. So Shmuel has been effectively refuted. So remember again, I will say just to understand the progression, Shmuel wanted to posit that the only time the birth of a head is considered to be significant is when it's a viable child. But if it's a nefel, if it's a non-viable child, the birth of the head by itself does not create a birth reality. By nefel, by a non-viable child, it's only when it's the head and the majority of the body. We have effectively refuted that position of Shmuel and shown even by a nefel, even by a non-viable child, halacha l'maisa, once the head comes out, even we're going to see it's not even the whole head, once part of the head comes out, that child is considered to be born. Therefore, even if the child goes back into the womb and a second child comes out, that second child will ultimately be the Bechar for Nachala purposes, for the reasons we spoke about before, but will not be considered Pater Rechem for Pidyon Ben purposes. Beautiful. Amar Rabbi Shimon Lakish. We'll say, here we go. Padachas poteres b'chol makom chutz min ha'nachala. So we'll say, so comes along Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Shimon Rish Lakish says as follows. He says that the emergence of the forehead paters in every place except for nachala, except for inheritance purposes. Which will say means what? First of all, look at Rashi, Tiyuf to the Shmuel, Devade Rosha de Nefalim Mastis and Dafka. When the Mishnah spoke about the emergence of the head, even by a nefel, it was Dafka talking about the head and not the head of the majority of the body. Rashi says, Poteres b'chol makom, techashiv leida mi yitzias padachas, chutz min ha'nachala, ta'aba acharav b'chol l'nachala elim ken yatsa panav sharishon. So both say, listen to this. Comes on Rish Lakish. And Rish Lakish says, in general, once the forehead of the animal, or not the animal, once the forehead emerges on birth, that person or animal, right now we're talking about people, right? That baby is considered to be born, is considered to be the Bechar in all circumstances except for inheritance. My time, I will say, what's the reason for that? Yakir Amar Rachmana. Well, this is actually quite interesting. Because ultimately, by Bechar, the Torah uses the lashon of Yakir. The pasuk the Gemara is quoting Rabbi says actually by the situation of when a man is married to two women. One of them ultimately he likes, one of them he doesn't like. The Snua and the Ahuva. And the Bechar, the firstborn child, is born to the Snua. So what does the Torah say? We'll say, remember again, this is the section of, this is Kiseitse. This is Yefas Toar, Bechar ben Sorer Umora. So the pasuk says, Ki is habachar ben asnua yakir, lo seis lo pishnayim. Even though the bechar is born to the wife that he does not especially like, yakir, he must recognize that child as the bechar. So we'll say, this is amazing. So the Torah says, this is such a fascinating drasha, that the bechar for nachala is the bechar who you could be makir, who you could recognize. In other words, that there has to be enough of the child that is born that the child is recognizable. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Yakir ve'kera lesa ela b'pirtzuf panim. When does the child become recognizable? Not with the top of the head or the forehead, but when does the child become recognizable? Only once the face emerges. So this is actually quite amazing. So Rish Lakish says that halacha l'maisa, the birth of the forehead, up to the forehead, is considered to be a birth for every area, for every situation, except for nachala. Why? Because by nachala, in order for the child to be a bachar, the child has to be recognizable. Recognizable means pirtzuf panim, the emergence of the face. So Rabbi Yochanan says, no, afilu nachala, not true. Right, we'll say, fundamental Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even the emergence of the forehead is enough to establish this child as the Bechor for Nachala purposes. To which the Gemara says, La'asuye mai. Now, I will say, when Rish Lakish says that the emergence of the head, of the forehead, is Pauteres Bechol Makum in every situation. What is Bechol Makum coming to include? La'asuye mai. La'asuye hadutan rabbanon. This would come to include that which we learned. This is amazing. Giores sheyotza padachas vlada biyosa nachris va'achakach niskaya. This is quite a woman. So also listen to this. So what occurs? What occurs? So the forehead of the baby comes out while she's still not Jewish, right? And what happens? Va'achakach nisgaira. So the forehead emerges while she's not Jewish. And then again, she becomes a giores mamish, forehead out, and then the conversion process takes place. Va'achakach nisgaira. So we'll say, so again, the forehead emerged prior to conversion, the rest of the baby emerged post-conversion. Post-conversion. Va'achakach nisgaira. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? Ein nosnin la yimetuma v'yimetara. So we'll say we do not give this woman the halachos of Tumah and Tara, which we'll say is another way of saying what? Another way of saying what? That the baby is considered to have been birthed when? When she was not Jewish. And therefore, again, the forehead came out when she was not Jewish. Therefore, the baby was birthed when she was still a non-Jew, she was still a Gentile. And therefore, again, all of the halachos associated with Jewish childbirth do not apply to this woman. So, and also she does not go ahead and bring a carbon leda. So we'll say, so that's what it means when it comes to say under normal circumstances. So we'll say, so again, the fundamental machlokes over here between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish is only about forehead birth when it comes to nachla, when it comes to the halachos of inheritance. Reish Lakish says yakir. Yakir means only if the facial features come out is this child considered to be a bachar for nachala. Rabbi Yochanan holds that halacha l'maisa no, the emergence of the forehead creates a bachar reality in all cases. But all of them would agree that the emergence of the forehead certainly constitutes birth by all the cases. What does all the cases come to include? Even a dramatic case where the woman gives birth, or I should say births the forehead of the child and then converts. Halacha l'maisa, that child, first of all, the child is not Jewish. I will say, but by extension, that's what it means. Child's not Jewish, and therefore, again, all of the halachos concerning Leida do not apply to this woman. Even though now she's Jewish, all of the halachos concerning Leida do not apply to her. So I say when when it comes to inheritance, so it says yakir. Yakir means emergence of facial features. Ve'ezu yakaras panim. Then both say ultimately again, what does it mean that the face has to be recognizable? Pirtzuf panim imachotam. It means what? It means the facial features, including the nose. So both say, so it doesn't necessarily require the entire face, but require the forehead, ultimately again to below the nose. To which the Gemara says, Tani, ad hachotem. So both say, so this price seems to clearly indicate like who? Like Reish Lakish. That Allah Chamaisa, at least for nachala purposes, you need at least the forehead to the bottom of the nose. To which the Gemara says, no. Read it, it should read what? Ad hachotem. Ad hachotem means, I will say, up until the nose. Up until the nose means what? Really the forehead. Right? Up until the top of the nose means the forehead. Tashma. So we'll say, so again, remember, this is the fundamental machlokes here. So let's start with what we agree with. That's always important. So what we agree with, I will say, is that halacha l'maaseh, the emergence of the forehead is considered to be birth for every area of halacha. The shaila over here is when it comes to nachala, inheritance purposes. Reish Lakish says yakir, you need forehead and facial features, or at least up until the bottom of the nose. Rabbi Yochanan says no, forehead is enough when it comes to inheritance as well. Tashma, we'll say, so now we switch gears for just a moment. Ein me'idin ela al pirtz of panim machotim. So we'll say, now we're switching gears for just a moment. There's Ein Me'idin, Rashi says, Lahasi es ishto d'shema lav zel. Listen to this. A man goes overseas, or not even overseas, a man dies, and we want to testify now that he is dead, so as to allow his wife to go ahead and remarry. So the shaila is, in order to testify that he's dead, there has to be some level of facial recognition. So how much of his face do you have to see in order to testify that indeed he's dead? So I will say the halacha is, you have to be able to see what? The head including the nose. The head including the nose. So what do you see from here? You clearly see over here that halacha l'maisa, in order for the face to be recognizable, which would mean yakir, you have to have the head up through the nose, which would seem to be a proof for Reish Lakish that for yakir, for inheritance purposes, that's to be the face through the nose, which the Gemara says, no, ad hachotem, right? Ad hachotem. Rather, you could read it even for testifying about the dead husband. It's just up until the nose, which means even if you just see the forehead, that's enough ultimately to testify that the husband is dead. So the Gemara says, Tashma, padachas below pirtzuf. So the Gemara says, padachas below pirtzuf. Ultimately, again, if you just see the forehead without the rest of the face, panim, pirtzuf panim below padachas, ein me'idin achu shnei machotem. So we'll say similarly again, if you have ultimately panim below padachas, or if you have the panim without the padachas. They both say panim in this context over here is defined, the Shiddim Mikobetzes defines it as the cheeks. If you just see his cheeks, ultimately again without the forehead, that's not enough. Achu shneim imachotem. Rather, they both say what you really need over here is what? You need the forehead and the cheeks together with the nose. So ultimately, again, you need full face. This is about by testifying that a man is dead, so as to allow his wife to remarry. You need the entire face. What's the pasuk? We'll say just a few more lines, then we'll stop. Hakaras pneim on sabam. Calling the pasuk from Yeshayahu, Hakaras pneim, the recognition of their face testified against them. So we'll say, so you see from here that ultimately, again, in order to testify that the husband is dead, you need to see his entire face. Pashtus, what that would mean is, where the Torah used the lashon of yakir, like it does by inheritance, it should also require an identification of the entire face. Because there seems to be a proof to Reish Lakish that Allah Chalamaysa, the emergence of the forehead by itself should not be enough for Bechor, for Nachala purposes. To which the Gemara says, you can't bring a raya from here. Shiny Eidos Isha, the Achmira Barabanan. both say the rabbis were machmir over here when it comes to the eidos allowing a woman to remarry, which I will say makes sense. When it comes to testifying that the man is dead, so we require full facial recognition. Because obviously allowing her to remarry, both say, carries with her, if you're wrong, then what? Number one, so she's committed adultery. Okay, inadvertently, but adultery nevertheless. And if there are children, you've created, right, a proliferation of mamzerim. So therefore, again, because of that, Chazal or Machmir to say you need full facial recognition. But in Achinami, in different cases, you do not need full facial recognition. To which the Gemara says, is that true? That we're Machmir by allowing a woman to remarry? Umi achmiru v'hatnan. Huchseku lios masim eid mipi eid, mipi isha, mipi eva, mipi shivcha. It's not true, but in fact, in halacha, one of the areas where we are ridiculously lenient on is where? Allowing women to remarry. Right? Mishum iguna akila barabana. But we allow all kinds of stuff that we never allow in other areas of halacha. We allow one witness to testify based on testimony. I will say, if Reuven told me, I heard that Rachel's husband died, I know that Rachel's husband died overseas, I could show up in Beis Din and I could say, Reuven told me that Rachel's husband died overseas, and we would accept that testimony. We'll say that's called Eid Mipi Eid. We never accept that type of testimony, right? We'll say normally, again, a woman can't be an aid. We accept the testimony of a woman, an eved. So we're makel in situations of allowing women to remarry all the time because we want to avoid an aguna situation. Now I tell me, Machmir, says, I'll tell you the difference over here. Kila rabbanim b'sofa. When are the rabbis makel? At the end of this process, by the testimonial part of this process, bitchilasa lo akil rabbanon. But I will say ultimately, again, in the beginning, we ultimately what? In the beginning of this process, we are not makel. So I will say, see, here's what's interesting. To ascertain that the husband is dead, that we're going to be machmir on. And that will require full facial recognition. Once we ascertain that fact, the conveyance of that, or I should say differently, the mechanism which is used to convey that information, that the rabbis relaxed the standards on. We'll see here the chilik, to establish facts, we're machmir on. Once the facts are established, the mechanism through which we convey those facts, that the Rabbanon were makel on. So therefore, to establish the fact, full facial recognition. To convey those facts, we relax the laws of Eidos on a variety of levels. I will say with this, we'll stop. The other possibility, the other possibility is Yakir L'chud V'akaras Pan L'chud. We'll say the simpler answer that the Gemara gives is you're mixing and matching two different concepts. The Torah uses a different lashon when it comes to Bechorah, right? It uses a different lashon. What's the different lashon? Yakir. So the Torah is creating a different threshold when it comes to Bechorah. Yakir means that the Bechor has to be recognizable. Recognizable means what? Full facial recognition. That criteria does not exist ultimately by testifying regarding the death of the husband. Therefore, again, I will say the shaila only got off the ground because we thought it was one standard, one metric. Kamash Malon, there's yakir ultimately again when it comes to Bechor, but there's no yakir ultimately when it comes to the death of the husband. I'll just share with you just an important halacha here. Sorry, let me just pull it up over here. So the Shulchan Aruch Paskins, Shulchan Aruch Paskins, this is in Simin Shin Hey, Sif Chaf Beis. We pass on, I'll tell you, I can't find it right now, but the Shulchan Aruch Paskins against Shmuel. That halacha l'maisa, as the Gemara pretty much says, that when it comes, going back a little bit, when it comes to a nefel, the emergence of the head of the nefel, a non-viable birth, is considered to be a birth for peta rechem purposes, as well as, but not for nachala purposes. So we paskin like the reading of the Mishnah, not like Shmuel. Hence the Gemara says to Yufta. So the emergence of the head. Now this, we're going to get into this. This is not any head, meaning the baby does have to be formed to a certain degree. This is why, again, the shaila, we'll discuss the shaila about a woman who miscarries much earlier on in her pregnancy. Halacha l'maisa, subsequent children would be a bachar both for nachala as well as for pidyon haben. But halacha l'maisa, if it's a nefel, a non-viable child that is born, we paskin against Shmuel. The emergence of that head will ultimately say that the child who comes afterward will not be a petarechem for pidyon purposes, but will ultimately again be a petarechem for nachala purposes. I will say also, just enough of this will really end. It is striking to note that the way the parak begins, the status of Bechor is a status of Kedusha. That's what it is. Bechor is Kedusha. It's Kedusha, because remember again, why do you have to redeem? We're going to get into this. Why do you have to redeem a Bechor? Because remember again, before Cheta Egel, the Shevet Levi was not the designated Shevet. The Bechorim were going to do the Avoda. So even to this day, even though Shevet Levi has taken the place of the firstborns, the Bechor has Kedusha. You have to redeem it. Similarly again, why does the Bechor get Pishnaim? Why does the Bechor ultimately get a double portion of inheritance? Why? Again, it all goes back to the inherent Kedusha of a Bechor. Yet, what does the Mishnah say? Yesh bechar lenachala, ve'ena bechar lekohen. Which also means what? Kedusha is not an all or nothing. You see, sometimes the greatest obstacle in Ruchnius is we think Ruchnius requires perfection. Right? That to be a bechar, to be kaddish, either I get it all or I get nothing. And people throw in the towel in Ruchnius all of the time because they say to themselves, you know what, I'm so flawed. I'm so imperfect. I can't get it together. What's the point in trying if I can't be absolute? And they feel like it's disingenuous. I can't be holy. Right? If I'm going to be so flawed and so imperfect in this area, then why does it pay to do something ruchni and do something good in a different area? Right? The fact that I'm flawed in area A, by definition, undermines any positive spiritual treasure I get in area B. But what do you see from here? You see from here, Yesh b'char l'nachala, ve'ena b'char l'kohen. It will say Kedusha doesn't have to be absolute. All that Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do is try. There's no one of us that is perfect, that is Kaddish in all areas. But just because I can't be Kaddish in all areas doesn't mean I shouldn't try to become Kaddish in at least one area. It's okay to be a Bechar for Nachala, even if you're not a Bechar ultimately again for Pidyon. And it's okay to be a Bechar for Pidyon, even if you're not a Bechar for Nachala. The goal is at least to be Kaddish in some way, even if you can't be Kaddish in all ways.